Let's take the time to review a historical overlay map, which shows where the ancient mounds once stood relative to the current Bishop Ford interchanges. The maps are available, people. It will show the Indian tribes and where they lived if it was just a camp. If an entire tribe was there. One of the maps is, and I'll tell you in a second, they're used to visualize the intersection of ancient history and modern infrastructure. That is, they mapped out where the Amerindians Indians were, the Tartarian buildings, where the Indian encampments are, where the main altar is, where the mounds, where they congregate. All of these things are on the ancient history map. But then you have the modern infrastructure, which is what? The beginning of the changing of the infrastructure, the building of highways, the building of new buildings, removing the old, or covering up the old and building around it, flooding the areas out, causing fires to the areas, right? Paving over or burning things that are found in the environment. Researchers and historians primarily use, I told you that they have to go back to documentation about or logistics of how the American Indian lived in these areas with these tribes, specific tribes throughout that southeast coast, northeast, central, all of the Americas. There's documentation of how the Indians lived in Australia, Papua New Guinea, India, Hindustan, Haiti, the Tainos, the Arawaks, the Barbados, Central America, South America. There is documentation. All you have to do is open up the books and research. The researchers and historians primarily use, write this down, the Albert Schorf, S-C-H-A-R-F map, dated 1900 to 1901. Remember, Indiana is still fighting for their land in 1898, going into the 1900s. And then they had people over here that they need to help fight, brought over on the boats. They had people that they need to run the agency systems. They need people going west to explore lands and see who they need to remove, reporting back to the government, drawing maps. The Albert Schorf map of 1900s to 1901 is what they used to determine what was in this area by the 9th Ward and the Bishop Ford Expressway. If you research it, it is there and you'll see it. This map is the definitive historical record for the Chicago area. Only Chicago. It doesn't go past there. I didn't see anything past there. So I'm going to actually research more about Albert Schorf and see how many other maps he does have of the entire Illinois area. Now, it's meticulously documenting indigenous trails, villages, and mounds as they existed before 20th century development. That would be before the 1900s. Let's get into some more things that's in this map. Now, the Schorf map overlay, it acts as a blueprint of the original Chicago by overlapping it with modern coordinates. We can pinpoint the exact locations of the burned and paved over history of the 9th Ward and Bishop Ford Expressway. The Bishop Ford corridor is nothing more than modern highways like the Bishop Ford I-94 and the I-80 I-294 expressway going east and west. It's almost exactly mirror the ancient trails depicted on Schwartz's map. All they did was paved over it, people. That's all they did. We were already here. Now, the mounds and villages. Let's see what he has to say about this on the maps. Indian mounds on the map are mounds. They're indicated by a dotted circle surrounding a point. Wampum Lake, Hoxie Farm, this area is highlighted as a critical convergence point for multiple trails and waterways, including Thorn Creek and the Little Calumet River. Then we have the village sites. Large villages are marked by a teepee symbol. One such major village was located on the south bank of the Little Calumet River near present-day Dalton. I used to live in Dalton. Immediately adjacent to the Bishop Ford Path. Then we have the interactive digital resources. Now, if you want something more modern, interactive views of these maps or overlays, you can explore several digital projects. The first one is the Indigenous Chicago Story Map. Type that in, bingo, should bring it up. This is a project by the Newberry Library that maps permanent village sites and seasonal camps across the Chicago region. Then the radio station WBEZ has something called the Curious City Interactive. It is a digital tool that specifically tracks the search for lost mounds, including the famous Lizard Mound in Lakeview. Did you not know that there were mounds at Lakeview? That's the north side of Chicago. And for a long time, they had it where blacks, they didn't even want us up there. And there were mounds there. Indians were living there. If you look on the map, you'll see that there's mounds right there in Lakeview. And there are others across Cook County. Remember, there are different counties. For those of you who do not know, Cook County isn't just Chicago. Cook County can go all the way as far north, west, and south, and east. Okay? It is the largest county in Illinois, the largest county in Chicago. Then we have the making of the Calumet landscape. It is an ArcGIS story map that allows you to swipe between historical 1930s USGS maps and 2021 aerial views showing how landfills and interstate highways displaced the original Indian boundary lines and mounds. I will put this in the YouTube video where you'll be able to click these maps. Then we have physical traces. Now, while most mounds in the 9th Ward were leveled for the Allodial Gardens development or the highway, you can still visit where survivors nearby, which is the Winfield Mounds in West Chicago, Illinois. It is documented as a prehistoric burial site that survived in the broader suburban area. Prehistoric burial site. You have the Serpent Mound, located in Schiller Woods, which is Schiller Park, Illinois. These low curved mounds are some of the few remaining physical earthworks in Chicago, or correction, in Cook County. Those are 2 mound areas, not to mention any of the other ones. I looked at those links that I told you about, the maps that showed where the Indigenous, their camps were, their homes, where they lived, where they resided. I clicked on those maps and wow, it's powerful. I can't wait to put this podcast up so that those links are available. Now, to get started, I am going to help you visualize the exact locations where ancient mounds and modern landfills intersect along the Bishop Ford Expressway in the 9th Ward. Now, I'm specifically now trying to narrow down more so we can look at the alignment of two specific mapping sources. Again, the Shorf map for the ancient mounds and trails. The Albert Shorf map of 1900 and 1901 documents the indigenous landscape before it was paved over along the path of what is now the Bishop Ford Expressway. Now, Shorf identified the Vincennes Trail. This major trail, now roughly the path of the Bishop Ford, was a primary route for the Council of Three Fires. He identifies the mound as dotted circles on the map in the 9th Ward Calumet area. Shorf also noticed several of these clusters near the banks of the Little Calumet River. The Hoxie Farm area, directly where the I-80 and I-94 interchange now sits, Shorf's map shows a significant convergence of trails and village sites that correlate to the fortified village where the 70-plus remains were found. Second, the landfill map, which is the modern desecration. Now, the burning you referenced, you and I reviewed, it all occurred at the cluster of landfills directly adjacent to the Bishop Ford Expressway. Now, these sites were built on top of the marshlands, and some of the marshlands are still there. Wolf Lake, and forest preserves, a lot of the parks, and mounds, which are identified in Shorf's work. The first one is WMICID Recycling and Disposal, which is located 138th and Bishop Ford Expressway in Chicago. Then there is Waste Management, CID, called Gas Recovery. It is also waste management, situated at 1825 East 130th Street, right at the entrance of the 9th Ward. Past it and land and lake landfills. These massive sites sit between 122nd and 130th Streets, bordering the expressway for over 70 years. These locations were used for industrial waste disposal and high-temperature incineration of toxic fluff, effectively sealing or burning the ancient layers beneath them. Now, where to see the overlay? While a single unified live map of both does not exist in a single link, you can see the historical versus modern transition through the Illinois EPA's interactive landfill map by comparing the EPA's coordinates for the CID and Paxton landfills with the dotted circles on the Shorf map. You can see the Bishop Ford was constructed as a bridge over what was once one of the densest, glory be to Yah, one of the densest indigenous ceremonial landscapes in the Midwest. Let's read that again. On the Shorf map, that's CHARF, and you can click on the Illinois EPA's, which is the Environmental Pollution, Agency, which is it has an interactive land map. They're asking you to go between the EPA's land map, landfill map, and the Shorf's map. So modern versus historical. And you'll see that the Bishop Ford was constructed as a bridge over what was once one of the densest indigenous ceremonial landscapes in the Midwest. This is some of the partial research. We're going to get into more of the Illinois tribes later, but I have to drive a point to get you to where I want you to be when I begin to get to the meat and the body of this particular episode, which is about Illinois, the landfills, the frequencies of the spiritual sites, the breaking of the frequency, the connection of the Cahokia mounds, which is a high civilization, connecting to all of the other thrones, and high altars. Let's get in specifically the high throne on LaSalle Street in Chicago. We know LaSalle Street as what? City Hall. Let's go. Now, in the context of LaSalle Street, the high throne typically refers to the commercial architectural landscape rather than an ancient indigenous site, in which we already know it's going to be contradicted. The term appears in two distinct historical and artistic contexts. Insul's Throne, INSULLS, which is the Civic Opera House. Ironic that they would place that building there. Now, the most famous throne on or near LaSalle is a visual nickname for the Civic Opera House at 20 North Wacker Drive, just west of LaSalle. But there are other buildings that are considered to be high altar places, as well as the place of crucifixion near LaSalle Street. Right? Now, the legend is that they built utilities by Samuel Insull. He designed Art Deco designs on buildings once he got to them. He put two flanking wings and a tall central tower resembling a massive high-backed throne. What is the purpose of that? Now, the orientation of that is that locally, it is said that the throne faces west, symbolically turning its back on LaSalle Street and the Chicago financial district that Insull eventually fell out with. Then we have the maps to look at. We have the Chicago skyscraper maps, which detail historical site maps identifying the building's the building's footprint and its relationship to the LaSalle corridor. Then we have the LaSalle Street Reimagined maps, which is the modern planning maps showing the density of Art Deco landmarks in the district. I told you in order for them to build anything modern, they have to go back to the ancient and what was found once they got here. And they have to include the indigenous lands, whether they can build on them or not, if they're still unincorporated. If there remains there, they can't build on it. The forest preserve is protected as well because some say that they are biblically connected. The Amerindians are the Israelites, so they're biblically connected. And when I say biblically, that means that Yahshua walked the land. Now, the second is the Chicago throne sculpture, which is a modern artistic reference which is found at the north end of the LaSalle corridor. The sculpture, which is known as the Crossing, is actually a 25-foot aluminum figure by Hubertus van der Glots, stands precariously on a beam atop a pedestal at Gateway Plaza on North LaSalle Street. The visual context of it all is that it is sometimes nicknamed the Chicago throne or financial throne because the figure appears to be balancing over the massive canyon of LaSalle Street with the Chicago Board of Trade building in the background. Remember, that's those buildings that they took over and made them about trade when the trade of the Amerindians were already taking place in that area. So when you see the Board of Trades or you see Wall Street, you think that that is the European invention, and it is not. It is just something that they took over. Now the indigenous context. Let's get into that Schwartz map again. Now while the Albert Schwartz map of 1900 through 1901 does not explicitly name a high throne, it identifies the LaSalle Street. Come on now. That area is part of a high ground ridge used for ancient trails. High ground, meaning the street follows a natural geological ridge that made it a prime location for the Vincennes Trail and other early paths. The mound indicators, remember Schwartz used dotted circles to mark ceremonial mounds, though most in the downtown loop were leveled by the mid-1800s. So in downtown Chicago loop, there were ceremonial mounds, people meaning marriages, weddings, people being promoted to high priestess or chief, ordaining, weddings, spiritual rituals, Israelite and Hebrew practices, ceremonial mounds. His map also indicates the original high energy areas of the center or the city center. High energy areas, people, high energy areas. The frequency stopped once the concrete went over what? The Bishop Ford. High energy centers where the thrones were, high energy systems where Holy Family Church is, high energy centers.
Welcome to my ancestors' voices, such an alignment. Welcome to my podcast with your host Lenora, better known as my history.